All right. Good morning and welcome everybody to the Never Stop Healing podcast. This is your host of the day, Cade Archibald, and I am really excited to be diving into some really cool stuff today. Along with me, we got the one and only founder, creator of East West Health and the Accelerate Wellness programs, Regan Archibald. Regan, how you doing?
Doing awesome.
Very cool. Well, last night we had our hack. If you guys are not a part of the Health Accelerator community and the challenges that we put together every Wednesday evening, reach out to us, 801-582-2011. We want you to be a part of our community and our group. But last night we had a really insightful Health Accelerator challenge with Tristan, our fitness coach, expert extraordinaire, going over some really cool insights on what it's a polypeptide, or remind me what that is.
It's an amino acid. Carnosine is.
Carnosine.
And we'll cover it a little bit today too.
Yeah. So yeah, that was some really cool information that Tristan was able to put together for us last night. So if you're not a part of that, reach out to us. You can call, text us, 801-582-2011. You can also learn about the Health Accelerator challenges at acueastwest.com/hack. Let's dive into today. What are we going to learn today, Regan? I'm excited for today's topic.
Well, I think, there's this interesting research study that I've looked at that basically shows that most people, when they lose weight, it comes back on. And so today we're going to title this, How to Stop Losing Weight, because it's never what we've been about, even though in our programs we have an average of, with people who have, more than 30 pounds to lose, we can help people lose about 30 pounds in 6 to 7 months. And it's not unusual to see that happen. Our quick average within 60 days is 15 pounds. And of course, we use like different peptides and we give people shortcuts. But in doing that, the number one thing that we are focused on is getting your body healthy so that we lose the weight for good. And the only way you can do that is you have to change habits and lifestyles. You can't expect to, even if it's the coolest peptides and detox on the planet, you can't expect to keep the weight off if you don't change your habits. And so the way you change your habits is by changing your mindset. And the way you change your mindset is by changing your identity. And so one of the books we have our members read is called Atomic Habits. But today we're going to take a deeper dive into, first of all, how you can, really optimize your metabolic function, what to look out for, where the big barriers are, but really I want to focus on the end result of it, which is not you just achieving that goal of losing weight and then quickly slipping back into old patterns, especially with the holidays coming up. Everyone's, people have stress in their life, but really maintaining it because of the identity that you're now established with. And so that's what we're going to jump into. What do you think about that, Cade?
I love that. Really excited. Let's dive in.
So first of all, I'll talk about this study, and it's pretty interesting. It's called Biology's Response to Dieting and the Impetus to Weight Gain. If you guys want to check it out, it's published about 10 years ago. And the interesting thing about this study is they found that individuals who, were and this was published in the American Journal of Physiology and Regulatory and Integrative and Comparative Physiology. So it's a long volume, 301, issue 3. But the cool thing that they found in this in the literature is that if the fact that 60% of adults and almost 20% of children are overweight or obese. This was 10 years ago. That number has crept up about, from what I can tell, 3 to 5%. So we're almost 65% of adults are overweight or obese, and then almost 25% of children. And actually, a sobering study was that Hispanic or African American kids, 25% of them are type 2 diabetics. So we've got a bunch of changes that we need to make as far as it goes for them living a healthy lifestyle. But in this particular study, what they looked at is they found that 20% of individuals that have attempted to lose weight are able to achieve and maintain a 10% reduction over a year. So they found, yeah, that's pretty crazy. And then over 1/3 of lost weight tends to return within the first year, and the majority is gained back within 3 to 5 years. So that's what they looked at. It's like, why is it coming back? Because if our goal is we want to make your next decade the best decade, well, in order to do that, and most people who come to work with us, one of their first goals is, hey, I want to start getting trimmed up. I want to get muscle hypertrophy in certain areas, and the dudes, they want the chest and the arms and the abs. Ladies all want the abs and the legs. And so in order to do that, this article and this research, which I think is pretty fascinating, it looked at what are the other mechanisms behind weight loss and why are people putting it back on? So Cade, if you think about that, you just think about your own life. It's like, well, what is it when you've had massive fluctuations, like in a change, and then what is it that pulls you back out of that pattern? Have you ever been like in an exercise routine or an eating routine, and then you kind of get slapped and you forget that you'd already made the changes, and then you go back to old patterns?
Yeah. And you're asking what gets me out of that cycle, or what can cause that kind of bump in the cycle. So yeah, I think like vacations are always tough. Like when you get out of your traditional rhythm, or you go get out of that, it makes it tough. And so it really does take a lot of mental discipline just to remember, okay, why am I doing these things? What's the purpose? I like to create just easy, simple habits. And I've told this community a lot about, like, my rule is I at least get 50 push-ups in a day. And that's what kind of keeps that thing going. So I wake up in the morning, and that's like one of my morning routines. So I can do those whether I have a gym, if I'm at home, if I'm on vacation in a hotel, it doesn't matter. I can always bust out some push-ups, and that kind of keeps me disciplined to that parameter. And so it's a really good one. Even, I would say that's like just keeping, the whys involved, because it really is easy to get bumped off your routine and different things when you get outside your comfort zone or outside of your kind of normal stay.
Yeah, and it kind of, for those of you watching on YouTube, Cade's actually at the beach, and so he is.
Yeah, I already did I'm on vacation here in gorgeous. I think I'm in Hawaii, we'll say.
It looks like kind of Hawaii. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, right? It's a little better background than a stale white wall.
Yeah, and we have several of our patients in Florida. Holy cow, you guys have gotten pounded. And so we're, hopefully things are being recovered there pretty quickly. But really, as you look at this in the study, as the researchers dove deeper, they realized, okay, well, eating's not just, why do we eat? It's not just because we're hungry. And so I think that's a misnomer that we look at, as we say, oh, we just eat because our bodies tell us we need to eat. But I can tell you, when hunger goes away, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, and you guys can plug it in the chat box too, but how many of you have ever eaten when you're not hungry? I know I have. So, and I think if we're honest with ourselves, we'll say, yeah, well, what is it that triggers that? Well, sometimes it's boredom. Sometimes there's anxiety. Sometimes I find I eat senselessly when I'm, working on a tough mental problem, where I'm trying to figure out how to write a chapter, or how to put some research together and I'm just kind of stuck and I'm out of my flow state, food becomes a distraction, and it's an easy way. It's an easy out. It's kind of like the red dress in the Matrix, where Morpheus is walking with Neo and trying to train Neo on watch out for Agent Smith, and then Morpheus says, are you paying attention, or did you just look at the woman in the red dress? And then Neo looks around, and then he's got Agent Smith with guns on his head, So it's like those distractions, but food is like the red dress in so many cases. The other thing is, from a tribal perspective, humans, we've always, kind of hovered. If you think of Dunbar's law, Dunbar's law is that we can have about 150 relationships, 150 people in our network and community, not much more than that. But one of the things that's always brought us together is food. And so humans get together, and how many parties you go to, Cade, where there's nothing that you're eating or drinking? Have you been to a single one that you can remember where there's no beverages, no food?
No, and if there's not, it's typically not like, it's kind of a lame party, if there's not like a spread of something, whether that's drinks or food.
Yeah.
Just at least the food tray and everything.
Yeah, it can be super healthy food. It can be non-booze. I mean, it can.
Yeah.
There's just like there's nothing wrong with it. But I think if we start looking at the mechanism behind why people put the weight back on, that's really the exploration of the study that I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the things they dove deeper into is they said, well, all right, well, what is it that makes the big change, and how is it that so few people maintain this? And we have a pretty exceptional track record. I know several of you on this right now, you've lost weight, 5-10 years ago with us, and it hasn't come back. You may have had little episodes where we've had to reset things. But one of the questions that you want to look at is, you want to say, what is something that you can do for the rest of your life? And this is where, I'll do a carnivore reset. I'll do go keto. I'll do more time restricted eating, different fasting cycles. But at the end of the day, you've got to look at what works for you. And I found that when I was doing a pretty heavy intermittent fasting, I would get pretty depleted because I was trying to crunch my eating window into like this 8-hour time period. And I did that for a couple of years, but I found that my breakfast, when I'd have to skip breakfast, it seemed, because I wanted to eat dinner with my family always. But when I'd skip breakfast and then I'd eat around 10 o'clock and try to get in the morning and try to get my dinner in at 6, the problem is when I'd show up to the clinic, there's so many things going on that my breakfast would be very, non-substantial. I couldn't get the protein in. I was exercising before work. And so what was meant to be kind of a healthy lifestyle was actually causing more stress. And then sometimes being in a fasted state, my wife would be like, your breath smells bad. And so, because, you're going to ketosis. And so I was like, well, I don't want, that's rude to do to my patients. And so I apologized during that time period if my ketosis was getting, singeing your nose hairs. You can slap me if you guys are with me face to face. But
apologize in advance as well.
You don't think about that. And then, not only that, but I started looking at some of my stress markers. I'm like, oh man, I'm actually causing some more oxidative stress. And LDL cholesterol is one of those markers that has a linear correlation with cardiovascular disease. So I said, all right, well, maybe I'm doing a little more harm than good, even though I got my I was almost like insulin resistant, pre-diabetic. And so I went on this pretty massive fluctuation, but now I found a pretty good set point that I like. And I do eat breakfast and actually feel much better when I eat a good, healthy breakfast with a lot of protein in it. So what we're going to be chatting about today as we go deep into this is, first of all, I challenge you to say, all right, well, what is it that's triggering you to eat, and just being aware and just accepting the fact that we eat for so many different reasons besides hunger. Hunger is it's like a lower level, because I know fasting, you lose that craving. but then if you can pull a James Clear in Atomic Habits, and this is where we have all of you in your reset phase, we say, hey, please read Atomic Habits. So we have you read Atomic Habits in the first phase of the Accelerate Wellness program. The second book we have you read is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And that book just shows you, step one is identify yourself as who you want to be. And this is the 3-step phase that will help you get rid of weight for good. And so it's really important. First of all, in Atomic Habits, it's making new habits easy. And we give you 6 essentials in each one of these phases. But you got to make the habit easy. So, and then you have to identify with who you're becoming, because your identity is what creates the mindset. And then the mindset's what creates the habits. And the habits is where you start to realize that it's just as easy to eat healthy as it is to eat poor, or to eat the standard American diet. And so the reset's all about that. It's learning to read labels, getting rid of sugar. It's about exercising frequently. It's about getting the right hydration in, because every nutritional plan starts with hydration. It's about setting an intention for your day so you have this deeper sense of purpose. It's about just blocking and tackling. Go ahead, Cade.
Yeah, and I think Diane brings up a great point. She typed into the chat box. Do we eat sometimes when our body really need water or want water? I was told to drink a glass of water before you reach for food, unless it's mealtime, which I think that's, staying hydrated will really help with that overeating as well. Because if you're maintaining good water, sometimes our body just starts craving things, and it's nice, if you got snacks or chips or something that's, got that salty flavor, that's going to quench, salt's going to help quench the thirst as well as the appetite. And those are things that our body's going to drive for, go towards. So we have kind of those 3 salts, fats, and sugars, right? That's kind of or not fats. What's the 3 cravings? Like it's salts, sugars.
It's our bodies are hardwired, our brains. We're looking for fats and we're looking for sugars. It's just those 2 things. I think you're referring to Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. He's the one that kind of uncovered that concept, which I think is pretty fascinating. But yeah, Diane, you got a great point. And that's just, one of the reasons why in the reset, it's like, get hydration first, because if you can get rid of the physiological cravings of food, because those are real. And that's one of the things that I think peptides is the shortcut, because you use a GLP, agonist like a semaglutide, and suddenly you're like, oh, I need to remember to eat. Like I forgot. Or if you have blood sugar dysregulation, because if you eat sugar and your blood sugar goes high, it spikes, and then insulin comes in and pulls your blood sugar too low, then you get hungry, and that's a feeling of suffocation when you go into a hypoglycemic trend, downward spiral, where you're like, I got to eat something fast. Like you'll eat anything. That's where the Snickers commercials are beautiful, because it's anger. You're just like, you'll destroy someone's life in order to get that Snickers bar. So yeah, don't the physiological cravings. But I think for most of our patients, those are gone in the first 30 days. Because we use another peptide called epitalin that gets people sleeping better. And we had a really cool, we've had a couple of cool patient experiences with epitalin, actually. And that's Heather Moore, one of our acupuncturist, functional medicine practitioners here, has been getting her patients who aren't sleeping well. I was like, just try some epitalin. And, we've had a patient just last week say, I've slept better on epitalin the last 2 months than I have in the last 10 years. And so there's some really good things that happen when your body sleeps. Then you don't have that leptin resistance. You don't have the ghrelin that's pulsing at you. So I think once we get rid of those things, then, this is more the conversation of today is like beyond the physiological cravings, what is it with food that really traps us? And why is it that people don't lose weight for good? And, because our goal is like, hey, if you're going to lose weight, let's just lose it for good. Because Cade, when you and I started working together 10 plus years ago, you lost like 50 pounds, and you just like, great, you haven't put it back on. I mean, you had little fluctuations here and there, but you're not anywhere near where you were, 10 was that 10 years ago? How long has that been?
Yeah, so it was 2013. Yeah, it's been 10 years exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. Doesn't seem like it's been that long, but yeah, I was, probably about 45 pounds more than I am now. I think at one point I got down to like, 50 pounds lost. I hover between kind of that range. I've started trying to do a lot more muscle building. So weight's a little bit higher, but yeah, it feels great. And it's been an amazing experience. And yeah, there's been some ups and downs. And I think, when we had Olive, I probably kind of put on a few extra pounds along with Sierra. That seems to be my trend, but I was able to get back in line.
Yeah, baby weight. Yeah. Dudes have an excuse apparently. So
Yeah, I don't know what the excuse is other than just sympathy. We'll call it that way.
well, I think actually if you look at human behavior, like one of the things that you'll find is if you hang around people who eat more than you do, you'll tend to eat a little bit more. Like I go to dinner with Steve and Brent. This was in
Oh
the
yeah.
And I guarantee you, I ate about 500 more calories than I typically would just because they order everything on the menu. I think maybe, you look at pregnancy and it's like, well, yeah, a mother's got to consume more calories just because you're growing, you got to feed yourself, but you also have to feed this cool baby that's growing in your womb. I think
Totally.
there's some wisdom to looking at that. So we talked about the first two books. We talked about phase one, Get Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's so interesting because the simple thing is make it easy to have a healthy lifestyle, and this is where macros are really important in protein. So we're going to jump into some of the mechanisms of how you can keep the weight off for good. The strategies, but I want to give you context first. So atomic habits, identify who are you becoming, make the habits easy so that they replace the other things you're doing, because we all have one resource. Every single human, the playing field is level for the most part. We all have this one thing called time. And it's what you do with your time is what makes the difference. It's like, how can that, one person be incredibly fit and super healthy, and then someone else is sedentary, obese, and their body's just, there's always a crisis going on. And a lot of it goes down to how they're utilizing their time. And so the next book is called Essentialism in the Recharge Phase, which is where we start getting rid of the things that are no longer needed. And we just did this exercise as a clinic. We asked every member in our organization, we said, what are the things that you're doing that aren't worth doing? Because our motto at East West is anything worth doing is worth doing well. And hopefully you guys can feel that. And any time we take you on as a patient, anytime we execute on a treatment plan, we do it as well. We do it well. We do it really exceptionally well and over deliver. But on the flip side is it worth doing? And that's actually a really hard thing. And so in your phase two and the recharge is, okay, look at the things in your life and read the book Essentialism, because Greg McCown does a great job of like just filtering out, like, is this leading to where I want to go in my life? And do I need to get rid of this, this habit, this thing I'm doing every day, this project that you're working on? Is it really valuable? And it's so hard for us to let go of those things that are no longer useful. And most of these are belief systems. We have these false beliefs that, I have to eat, in a certain way. I've got to have my vegetables in the morning, and I have to have a certain amount of eggs, or whatever your belief system is. Maybe you don't have to do that, or maybe you do. Maybe there's another way. Maybe fasting too much, as a belief system I had, maybe that's actually can cause a little more oxidative stress in your body, and actually it's just not a fun way to live. But also on the flip side, maybe fasting once a week is really powerful because you learn that you have control over what your intake is. And so I think there's some wisdom in just looking at those things that are essential from the non-essentials, and doing that on a regular basis is really what drives you towards that new identity, because you're not bogged down by the past. And so that leads to our phase three, which is the restore. And this is where we restore all the vitality, all the longevity, the metabolic flexibility. And this is the book by Benjamin Hardy. And this book is called Be Your Future Self Now. And Be Your Future Self Now is such a powerful read. And I think I mentioned to you guys, I've been working with Ben, and he's finishing up his next book, which is 10 Times is Better Than 2 Times with Dan Sullivan. And so as soon as I get the manuscript, he was texting me over the weekend. He's almost got it ready, but I'll share some of the insights on that. But Be Your Future Self Now is such a great book, because it's like, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years from now? Because we want to make the next decade your best decade. And, that's another motto of ours here at East West, but you want to pull the future in as quickly as you can. So it's like, well, he uses the analogy of, he wants to be an amazing father who's present, not distracted with his phone and not distracted with work when he's home. So he wants to come home from work and be home, because he's got 5 kids and a lot of them are younger. He wants to be a great husband. And so as he's writing this book, Be Your Future Self Now, that was one of the chapters that he was working on. And he's driving home from work, he realizes, oh, wow, I guess I should put this into action, because he's looking at future psychology. And there's a whole, he's a PhD in I think human behavior and psychology, some field of psychology where, he's looking at human behavior, and it's pretty fascinating. But he said, I should probably put this into action. And he got home, and it was like, he could just relax into it. He would go home in the past, and the house would be messy, and he'd get kind of frustrated. He's like, man, and it's so chaotic here, because he's working in a very structured environment. He's got quiet time where he can write. And then he goes home, and it's like, how it is, Cade, with kids. You go home, and it's like, oh, it's like whiplash. It's like chaos sometimes. And you just want to run back to work, because that's where it's peaceful. Things are orderly. But he came home that night, and he's tried to do this ever since. He did the exercise, but it just felt like he could embrace the chaos. And actually, he appreciates it now. He's like, this is so cool that my kids are coloring, and they've got toys over here, and they've messed up the couch because they're wrestling. And he just sees how amazing chaos can be. And that's his future self, as he pulled it into the present. And so, that's one of the things we're doing in the restorative phase is what do you want what do you want your life to look like in the next 10 years from now? And then you start visualizing with an identity that's attracted to a future version of yourself. And that is the real sticking point where we help people lose weight for good. And that's part of the research that I shared from you from 10 years ago that I didn't even know existed until just this week. So it's kind of interesting, because that's what the researchers found, is if you can identify with a future version of yourself and basically separate yourself from the past. And even some people have said, yeah, I got rid of my clone. And my clone was a rogue version of myself. When they've lost 100 pounds, they basically said, I stripped off the old human in me. And it's so cool to see that transformation happen, because, people come to life, but then they're always thinking of the future version of themselves, so they don't trend back into those patterns. So yeah, any thoughts on that, Cade?
Yeah, I just think there's just really, really cool concepts and awesome stuff.
Yeah. So if you want to, and this is where it's like, stop losing weight. Like that's, it's not the goal. It's never been the goal here, even though we talk about it often, and we have our weight loss challenges, and I've done, the lose to win challenges. We've done that with corporate wellness programs. It's been super successful, but the only thing that makes it successful is when there's that connection to a new identity and a new future version of yourself. And yes, as you fix your physiology, it makes it 10 times easier. If you're constantly craving sugar, if you've got this anxious eating, that's where Selenka is really powerful, because it gets rid of some of those food cravings, especially if you've had issues with any type of eating disorder. That's one of the hardest addictions to break. I mean, it's so challenging, because you can't live without food. It's always going to be there. And so that's where we have like Andy and Jenny, who are phenomenal at working with our patients and helping them understand those little triggers, because that's in Atomic Habits. Those triggers, if you can identify what are the triggers, And right when the impulse happens, if you can switch the impulse from going towards, for me, for example, it used to be the chips, and still sometimes I'll fall back into that. But if I can identify that trigger, and then if I do something like some sit-ups or push-ups, I love doing push-ups too, or I just go outside and walk around the block, and then I can come back at the project I'm working on, and then that impulse is gone. But if you have something that you shift in a habitual way, you get the impulse to eat, and you do physical exercise instead, then that energy's gone, and then you just change your habit, and that's what the whole thing's about. And so pretty fascinating.
Yeah, really fascinating. And that's kind of where I got the concept of like, hey, worst case scenario for exercise, if I don't have a gym, I don't have something to do, I can at least do push-ups. And when I brush my teeth, my habit is I do air squats. That's like, because you can't do push-ups when you're brushing your teeth, but yeah, you're sitting there for a minute and you might as well get some movement in.
Yeah.
Sierra's always like, you can't exercise before you go to bed. It's like, well, I can do some air squats and get the heart rate up a little bit, especially if I ate a little too much at dinner. That's like my mental check-in. I like to look at things as kind of ebbs and flows throughout the day. And so if I know, like, I probably overate a little bit at dinner, or I ate a little too much sugar, or, carbs, things like that, I look at it and say, okay, I need to do like 50 air squats rather than maybe 30 at the end of the day. And that's kind of I got some little checks and balances that I just try to maintain that, like, current state, as well as like my morning workouts, or where I'm focused on growth. And then if I can do little activities or little exercises throughout the day, I can kind of even the playing field. If I mess up, I eat something I shouldn't, something like that. And that keeps me more it keeps my mental state at least happy with my health, my weight production.
And actually there's good research to back that up. In our 100-day fat burning challenge, we actually have, one of the challenges in that is to take a walk after dinner. It's been shown that you have more insulin sensitivity. You tend to use your glycogen storage quicker, so that you can go into fat burning mode when you're sleeping. You get better growth hormone secretion. So there's a lot of wisdom in what you're doing. That's it's awesome. But if you did a full-blown exercise and you're spiking cortisol and you're spiking epinephrine and norepinephrine, probably going to take you a minute to fall asleep. But actually movement is so powerful before bed, and especially if you can do it when the sun's setting, it's awesome. I mean, obviously right now that we're on some of the shortest days of the year, so the sun sets. It's like, hey, I just woke up.
What just happened?
Yeah, I didn't authorize this.
So true.
But last night in the hack, I wanted to just circle back. So one of the ways that you can lose fat for good, like just get the body that you want, get it for good, get your diet locked in a way that's sustainable. Look at anything that we're talking about. Let's just ask yourself the question: can I do this for the rest of my life? Is this sustainable? And it's a really important question to ask yourself. But one of the reasons why protein is so powerful, because it, above all other macronutrients, has been shown at certain quantities, and if you have the right digestive system, which is where we go deep into the digestive system, usually month 3, month 4, once we've done some upstream detoxification, then we really start working with your microbiota. But the protein and the protein synthesis specifically is what's really important for building muscle. And there's 2 pathways that you want to look at. So there's mTOR and there's AMPK. And the mTOR pathway is what signals the protein synthesis. So that's what creates the RNA translation. And so then your body goes into this building pathway. And so if you think of like anti-aging medicine, David Sinclair talks about the mTOR pathway a lot, Peter Attia. And so it's pretty interesting, because you want to turn off this pathway, then turn it on. You don't want to be in this constant growth pathway. But If you can turn it off, then AMPK gets triggered and sirtuin activation gets triggered. It cleans up your DNA. But if you don't turn mTOR on, then you're not going to build muscle mass. So there's this, you can only fast for so long. And then how often do you eat? How much protein do you eat? These things are all really powerful. But one of the hacks, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, so I won't get too deep into protein right now, but just in general, what we recommend is about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And that seems to be sufficient. And eating that, 3 times a day, maybe an afternoon snack. And Tristan's been amazing at just getting people really dialed in their macros. We give you general macros when you come in and do your blood work with us, and you go through the health ascension process. But then when we look at it otherwise, there's a peptide, or there's an amino acid, and these are dipeptides, because it's alanine and histidine, and what they create is carnosine. And so for those of you who were on last night, Tristan actually went through this in the hack, but carnosine is really powerful, because what carnosine can do is actually help you sweep up old glucose. And when I say old glucose, I mean, like, it's literally helping clean up the excess amounts of glucose in your body. And so L-carnosine might be something that's really helpful for building muscle mass, helps enhance recovery, good for cognitive impairment. It's got anti-aging effects. It's found in the skeletal, the cardiac, the brain tissue. And it's also an antioxidant. So, Cade, have you dove into L-carnosine much, or is this
No, it's a brand new. I've heard about it, but never really dove into it. Really fascinating.
Yeah, and so L-carnosine is found primarily in animal proteins. Has a lot of very beneficial things. But one of the great things of L-carnosine is these amino acid bonds, and they have a site that binds to glucose. So when you make L-carnitine, and this is where if you've ever eaten something sweet, or if you've eaten like a carb heavy meal and you just your energy tanks, and then you'd eat the same amount of carbohydrates, but you have like some meat with it, some protein with it, and then you say, I didn't get the same crash. And a lot of that is what researchers are finding is because L-carnosine, it provides this binding site for glucose, and when it does that, it's like a sink. It's like it drains the glucose right out. And it actually is a great way that you can activate what are called GLUT4 receptors on your cells, so that you can actually uptake glucose without the presence of insulin. And by the way, this whole mechanism works so much better if you're exercising. If you're not exercising, the mTOR pathway, the protein synthesis, everything starts to break down, and your body gets more inflamed, your body ages faster. So anything we're talking about is in a person who is moderately active, which is pretty much 99% of the people in our community. And but L-carnosine is really phenomenal, because what it's been shown to do is to help, if you have any diabetic tendencies, if you have insulin resistance, the carnosine levels are going to be lower in you. And so you can look in metabolic syndrome if you've got metabolic acidosis, like if your hemoglobin A1C is elevated, your C-peptide's off, your fasting insulin's off, and then your anion gap and your alkaline phosphatase is off. There's a good chance you've got some metabolic acidosis. And so you'll have lower levels of carnosine, and that means you're going to have a higher prevalence of diabetes. So it's, when we talk about age reversal medicine, it's inflammation. Inflammation's like that number one thing. If you look at all the 9 hallmarks of aging, it's like, well, what causes stem cell exhaustion? Well, inflammation. And then what causes a lack of protein synthesis, which is another one of the 9 hallmarks of aging? Well, it's inflammation. And so you just go down the list. And so carnosine might be really helpful. There's another study that was published in 2008 that found that the brain actually needs high levels of carnosine. And what that will do is it helps diminish the inflammation, and it also helps provide protein linking in the brain so that you can actually diminish some of that uncontrolled glucose oxidation. And they've looked at this where in the animal models, at least, where they can find that by having higher levels of carnosine in the brain reduces the toxic effects of beta amyloid. And so, Cade, I guess you remember, we call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. And so it kind of makes sense that if carnosine levels are low, you're going to have greater prevalence of, insulin resistance in the brain.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at, you've mentioned L-carnosine and L-carnitine, and I was, I'm Googling over here the difference between the two, and they are two totally different amino acids.
Totally different. Yes. And I'm saying carnosine, not teen. I'm glad you brought that up.
And so I was like, wait, are they the same? Because it sounds almost identical. We had a question come in from Diane. Do we sell the supplement in our office? I'm assuming you're referring to like a L-carnosine supplementation. Yeah, it's typically in a compound, right, Regan, where there's an amino acid. We have some branch chain amino acids, some things like that.
Yes, certainly. And this is that is Sarah's department. She will be able to lead us to exactly what's needed.
It's fascinating to look at the differences. So you're talking about carnosine helping with inflammation and diabetes and things like that. And so, it's saying like it reduces the risk of I can't even say it. Arterial sclerosis and lowers cholesterol. So that would, lowers inflammation ultimately. Yep. While carnitine relieves angina, peripheral vascular disease, things like that. So really, two really rad amino acids. Yeah, we're talking about carnosine. Sorry, I was just in the background, like Googling different things, like, all right, what are we talking about here? This is fascinating. And carnitine is lysine and methionine versus carnosine is beta alanine and histidine. I'm not familiar with those two. I'm not really super familiar with those two. I've heard of methionine and lysine for sure.
Yeah. And if you think about it, these are part of amino acid chains. And so there's some of your essential amino acid chains. So this is where collagen, if you had some tryptophan in it, is you're going to be covering the bases. So you don't want to overload it. And this is where Tristan did a great job last night of making some recommendations, but like grass-fed meat, and this is going to be really important, like some of the, the red meat, if you can eat the cardiac tissue, the heart, or any offal, that's going to be amazing. But in just about 3.5 ounces of beef, you're going to have about 150 to 200 milligrams of carnosine. And the average that we want you eating is about 1,000 a day. And so if you think about that, like all you've got to do is, just try to get, 4 ounces of lean protein. That's going to be kind of minimum for carnosine. And if you're eating, the pound of or the 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, if you think about that, if you weigh 150 pounds, it's about 1.5 pounds of meat. And so that's like, you're getting well over, you're going to be at like 2,000 to 2,500 milligrams of carnosine. So there's, it's already kind of built in. And so it's a very interesting thing. And so as you're looking at your, how to lose weight for good and how to not lose weight, but actually re-identify yourself, I think making sure you're getting plenty of carnosine is one of the great ways of doing that. And especially early on, because it's a repository for glucose, and you don't want glucose circulating in your blood. You want it to be utilized as energy as quickly as possible. Otherwise it gets stored as fat. And this is where your triglycerides will go up. This is one of the reasons why LDL cholesterol might be higher in your labs. And it's so it's a very simple way. The final thing that one of you reached out to me this morning was asking about tesofensin. And tesofensin's amazing because tesofensin is another way that you can re-identify with who you're becoming, because it works on serotonin, dopamine pathways, and then it burns fat through the norepinephrine pathways. And tesofensin has been amazing because it works as a nootropic, but also as a fat burner. We call it the happy fat burner. But you can do that. It's easier to visualize a really powerful future when you feel good about life, when you feel secure, when you feel happy, you feel stable. So I think these are really important things. So, yeah, if you have high blood pressure, however, tesofensin can raise it. In the studies, it shows about 3 to 4 units on the systolic and diastolic measurements on your blood pressure. So that would be the one caveat. So just watch your blood pressure, but otherwise, very amazing. It's all part of the protocol. We take you through the reset, the recharge, the restore. We help you identify with who you want to become. We help you get only the essentials in life and get rid of the non-essentials in phase 2. And then phase 3 is where you really get the restorative phase, where you actually start bringing your future version of yourself now. And so you start focusing on that 10-year track. So hopefully this has been interesting. Really appreciate you guys. And once again, we like fixing things for good. Whatever is worth doing is worth doing well. And so especially when it comes to weight loss, the way you can do it well is by losing it for good.
Love it. I love it. Tesofensin. Regan, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask a couple questions before we wrap this up. So one of my favorite peptides as this community knows, is the tesmorelin, ipamorelin. That combo has just treated me really well. I've been off that the past, I think I finished it up about a month and a half ago. I haven't tried the tesofensin. I've heard you talk about it. I know you've used it. Would that be a good, like you just talking about it? Is that a good one for me to jump into?
Big time. Yeah.
Sweet.
I took it this morning and it's amazing.
Awesome. I'm excited. And that one's a capsule, right? It's not an injectable.
Capsule. Yep.
Perfect. Love that. That's a lot easier to administer. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Regan, amazing content as usual. Thank you so much for all you do for this community and the amazing content you put together.
My pleasure.
And, we will be back same time, same place next week, everybody. Love you all. See you next time.
Bye-bye.